like the video as it will help me to spread the message within the algorithms and social media. Joe Biden cannot be elected if it would serve democracy the way it should. But I will make this clear. No, I do not have any support going for Donald Trump. I am not a Trump supporter, but to elect Joe Biden would smear democracy in a trend paralleling towards the mud for 100 years. With the mountains of evidence of election fraud that the courts refuse to see, the Texas versus Pennsylvania lawsuit brought on by the Attorney General of the Longhorn State was dismissed unconstitutionally by the Supreme Court. Even though when a state sues another state, it brings what is known as original jurisdiction to the highest court in the land, meaning that there is no other paths to be heard in the lower courts. So the Supreme Court must hear the case. But the Constitution was null and void for these justices, and it kind of reminded me of the Byron Allen racial discrimination case against Comcast, and how the court basically, unlawfully, nullified the Civil Rights Act of 1866. The Supreme Court rejected Texas' claim that Pennsylvania illegally disenfranchised Texas voters by basically holding elections in violation of their own state rules. But only 2 other justices decided that they should hear the case and was outnumbered for dismissal, which means that the court refused to see the evidence of election fraud. And by breaking the original jurisdiction requirement, pretty much broke the laws of the Constitution. Rudy Giuliani, who was Trump's lead attorney, would get many of his lower court cases dismissed as well in all of the swing states. Not a single court will allow his evidence to be examined, and every single attempt got dismissed. To not allow evidence to be presented in the court of law for an election only shows one thing, and that is the powers that be has made a decision that Donald Trump is making the block too hot for them and must get replaced by any means necessary. They want to trade the overt racist president who provoked the masses to rebel in the streets for a much more slicker racist president who created the school-to-prison pipeline system as we know it today, but who was Obama's vice president. The wheels of white supremacy must continue to roll without the potholes in the road. The concrete of white supremacy must get constructed more smooth. By allowing Joe Biden and the Democrats to get away with such of an unprecedented assault to our democracy will solidify the unconstitutional placements of political insiders, making it almost impossible for grassroots candidates like myself to get in, because even I was cheated as well. But no, my story is not going to make the headline news, and I do not have that position of Donald Trump to really make my case become a national thorn in the Democrats' neck. But I do have a story of how my candidacy was cheated out of the ability to compete in 2020. And even though most Americans may not care, it draws a parallel to how it affects everyone in America, even affecting an American president named Donald Trump. The Democrats illegally refused to allow me to get polled to qualify for the debates. They created rules of how to make the debate stage and then kept me from participating with those rules. Even though I was a legal presidential candidate verified by the Federal Elections Commission. But I do not want to make this speech essay about myself, but I wanted to show a clear context of the unethical behavior of the Democratic Party to keep outsiders outside. And if blacks who descended from American slaves will get a black agenda priority president who keeps reparations at the forefront, then we must have ethical election practices. And any culture of election corruption must get obliterated immediately. Just like Biden nervously predicted, by 2040, white people will be the minority in this country. So why on earth should we co-sign the Democrats' efforts to be able to cheat elections? That would mean that they would be able to disenfranchise our votes even as a minority when white Americans will no longer have the voting majority. The silent majority will soon become the silent minority. This is why it is so imperative that we uproot this crooked system from its shabby foundation and plant new seeds for sprouts. This government is corrupted from the inside out, and it cancers every aspect of this society. From black Americans getting killed with impunity by white terrorists, on up to how the courts will prevent evidence of election fraud. We are in stage 3 cancer corruption, and it can no longer be treated with chemotherapy. We must form a new body to live in. And on January the 6th, with the help of key Republicans in the House and Senate, now objecting their electoral certification, we are about to see some interesting times. Congress will have to take a vote which favors Democrats, but if Mike Pence decides to not count the swing states' electoral voting tallies because of the dispute with evidence of fraud in those states, it gives the Republicans an edge, which would give Biden 222 electoral votes to Trump's 232 electoral votes. And according to the 12th Amendment, with this process, quote, the person having the greatest number of votes shall be president, end quote. Which means that the Democrats will fail in their attempt to benign neglect us out of the room once more. And it will show them that they will not be able to put their insiders in the White House by cheating us out. If Mike Pence does not object to this unlawful and unethical certification, then he can forget about ever being anything other than Trump's VP, as Trump's base made it clear to him of their expectations. And they expect him to refuse the certification of those swing states, which would turn the election over for Trump. And this put us in a better situation because Democrats will be delivered more pressure for 2024, and we will lead that charge. We will get reparations by the 4 elements as we demand our own candidates who carry our own agendas should have, particularly presidential candidates and other candidates with black agendas. And I will run again as a presidential candidate who will implement reparations the way it is supposed to. And as a black who descended from American slaves, I would defund the police and use my executive jurisdiction to go after the white terrorists who infiltrated law enforcement. And we will unite America against the status quo. We will unite America against white supremacy. We will unite America against corruption. This is presidential candidate Deon D. Jenkins, the only legitimate black agenda priority reparations presidential candidate. And I approve this message. Thanks for listening.